let's ship it. A couple pages of random things and make some protocol. I gotta go to the bathroom in a bit. No, okay.
I think we started long years ago because Stratum V1 just sucked. And it was motivated first by like data usage, and the first version was implemented by different parties differently, and it was just a lot of issues with it. And we somewhat anticipated usage of using the channels, so making it less like connection based. Yeah, the switch to binary was probably the first thing.
Right, and the origination of the idea of using a pool but still letting clients select their own work dates back to at least 2014, 2013. There was an idea back when we were founding Blockstream, actually. We were talking about building a pool and letting clients select their own work and supporting merge mine sidechains and all kinds of stuff. So that idea has been around forever. And I think it was just kind of a happy time to have so many different motivations for wanting to both improve the security and the efficiency of Stratum, and then also enable these other ideas. So
I agree with all that's been said. But I think one big motivation is that we're currently at the stage where we can deploy it, because I'm sure the integration would be really difficult throughout the globe, but let's say we could do some firmware things with Braiins OS that would make it easier. So like trying to convince the manufacturers to really start using the new protocol, we could probably provide the tools for the community to use it.
It was a trigger to actually spend some serious time on it, because we collected a lot of problems related to like set externals one and stuff like that. It was floating all around all the years, but just having the opportunity to implement it on both sides, on the firmware and pool side at the same time, was triggered. We felt it's a possibility to make the adoption happen.
And we'll see what's going to happen. I did a pitch in Honey Badger. I know.
Don't we have a list in the intro?
Yeah. Well, one of them is efficiency, and it's not just switching to binary, but we're trying to also to cover the use case with the block template distribution, right? Basically, you're sending the set new pref hash as a signal that the miners should start mining on a new block, but they already have the template for the block.
Right, and skip the empty block.
Right, and we're anticipating to provide multiple block templates, and one of them not being even empty. So if it's valid at that time when a new pref hash is found, then that should make it a little more efficient.
Right.
There is a lot of added flexibility in
Yeah.
the protocol itself. Like we should basically cover all industrial large-scale use cases without reconnecting the client, without stopping the miners, like switching hash rate from one node of the pool to second or stuff like that, multi-layers of proxy and stuff like that, and without losing efficiency, which was not basically possible with V1 easily.
The header-only mining is pretty good way. If you have firmwares that don't have to deal with the whole generating of the Merkle root.
Simplifies the firmware a lot and means the next major changes to Bitcoin don't require any kind of firmware level or mining protocol level updates.
Yeah,
which will be a nice change.
Some bug fixes, like we're making things easier a bit, like explicit specification if you support version rolling or not. It's natively in the protocol. Changing externals is natively in the protocol, which was not for V1. A lot of small like updates making things easier.
Plus security, plus picking your own jobs, plus efficiency in 20 ways, plus
A couple pages of random things and
right.
makes up a protocol. If you just look at the bandwidth numbers, I would be like
Right.
really convinced that I'm gonna switch.
Better support for proxies means,
Yeah.
in addition to not just bandwidth numbers per client, but actually bandwidth numbers per farm are going to be
Yeah.
1000x reduction
Maybe
in bandwidth numbers.
to explain it a little bit more is that if you aggregate connections on with the current stratum, you're also aggregating the difficulty, which it could be a problem for the farm because it cannot use some monitoring features of the pools generally.
Right,
Right,
it's
because
possible
you
to
have
build
variance of the hash rate on individual miners, so it's difficult to monitor them on the pool level.
Yeah, but in V2 you can still use a proxy and keeping it logically the same as not using proxy. So not using proxy with V1.
But with less data load.
What was the question?
better security for mining.
Yeah,
It's also really
I would say that if when we implement job selection, it would be a lot of buzz around that because it changes slightly how people look at mining and mining centralization problem. And I'm curious about how much or how many miners will actually use this feature. Because if there is an adoption of this feature, it would push other pools to implement it as well, which would be in general a good thing, and we strive for it, obviously.
I mean, they should look at the spec and have commands. And
just implement it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they will really fast, but it can be a like avalanche effect if there is enough pools doing that. It could help.
But the real barrier is really what's running in the miners. If you can switch the firmwares, okay, you can run in degraded mode where you have just local proxy that's able to translate V1 to V2, and then somehow having a pool that can do the protocol.
A lot of time for figuring out how to make the protocol in a way that you can have proxy for V1 to V2 or V2 to V1, so you can use a proxy on your pool side and pretending you are supporting V2, like pretending actually using it but translating it to V1 and having your node using still code V1. So I think it's not that difficult to.
Well, if this is the level of adoption that we consider already sufficient, then it's okay, because you would have proxy on the farm level and proxy on the pool level. The data savings are going to be huge, obviously,
and the security improvement
and the security would be improved
huge.
as well. So in a way, that's satisfying outcome.
It's an important first step, and we've been doing this Bitcoin thing for 10, 11 years. If it takes 10 years for mining to roll over and use new protocols, then that's what it takes. But happens eventually.
What would really help is a push from the miners for work selection, or job selection, because then you have to implement the whole stack. I'm not really sure if there would be enough for us, at least from the beginning, but having it prepared is a good thing.
Next week, right?
Next week.
Once the proxy is good enough, we would definitely deploy it as a proxy on pool side. So making the translation to V1, at least for first weeks, month, I don't know. And what we would like to do then is gradually rewrite the mining nodes to support natively V2. But hopefully nobody will notice it because it would have the same interface. Obviously, we will support V1 for years,
ages,
and years. But yeah.
Well, we will see it on our data bills. But we already have the endpoint up and running on v2stratum/pool.com. So for the
It's
images
more
from
like
last
we 1.9.
yeah, but for the images from last week it works. Yeah, so we probably are gonna support it from day one. The question is in what scale.
Yeah.
Probably not
Right.
rolling it into the whole production because it's very painful then switching everything. So initially we probably don't want a huge hash rate running through it.
And we should be ready with implementation when the specification is somewhat fixed. Because
Yeah, that's the main
Right.
and I think we should
barrier.
implement it before it is actually like considered fixed, because there is so many.
Yeah, we want to be sure it works.
It can be wrong.
But we already came across quite a few problems just by writing this small implementation. So this is already maybe like a fourth iteration of the protocol, or even more. Depends what do you call an iteration, but
There is like 3,000 edits, 4,000 edits in the doc.
we should publish the statistics.
It is breaking.
Maybe Google is watching because they do the Google Wave, so they should have statistics like how many characters have been typed and like the frequencies, and you would see, when we were working on it and so on.
I don't want to see the numbers.
Let's find somebody
Pretty
in Google. Yeah.
The way how it is implemented is like you can have your own Bitcoin core node, get the information about the complete block template, and discuss with the pool node that you would like to work on that. And if you have some token based on this negotiation, you can use it on all your mining connections. So there is asymmetry between how much work you need to do on the negotiation part and for how many connections you can use it. So, for example, you can have a trusted party doing all the work selection, and then use it for 100,000 mining connections without additional resources, which is super efficient.
And it was a big change from BetterHash, because BetterHash didn't provide that kind of flexibility.
It makes things complicated in a sense, but I think we
we have more
sorted it
boxes.
out. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 7 different roles, and the more complicated setups, but it is specified, and if there is a bug, anybody can.
And most of the protocol is less complicated than it seems. There's a lot of kind of different roles and different pieces that fit together, but each piece is ultimately rather simple. None of the, aside from maybe the pool side, most of the pieces are really pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but already pool operators know their infrastructure, so this should be readable and understandable for them.
When you look at the amount of hardware that's in operation currently, the majority is a product of a single manufacturer. And even though we have better technology now and better miners, which are probably have or double the efficiency of the current ones, they're not massively produced yet. So it's going to take quite a while for other manufacturers to even match up with what's currently deployed. And that's a big barrier in terms of renewal of the hardware. So the centralization is still in the hands technically of a single manufacturer, even though there are new ones coming.
Right. I mean, there's 4 different angles for mining centralization. There's the hardware, there's the new hardware coming online, there's centralization of the existing hardware, which luckily is a lot better than new hardware. There's centralization on the pool level, which hopefully if clients are picking their own work, or at least enabled to pick their own work, doesn't matter at all anymore. And then of course there's centralization on the actual kind of farm ownership level of who owns what hash rate going forward, and that's something that continues to improve. And so I mean, this is just kind of all of the areas continue to improve, and there's a lot of different areas to mining centralization, and I think this is a big part of improving at least the third area and hopefully making it not even relevant anymore.
Bosminer. Well, when we were developing Braiins OS originally, we knew that the CG miner part is the big bottleneck of future development, because essentially the current state of the code base of CG miner is pretty terrible if you want to support multiple different hardwares. Basically, some of it is still part of the public GitHub, but the rest is, spread through all the manufacturers, and they usually don't contribute, or they contribute something that's like 2 years old. So you really have to start developing separate branches, and they don't match with each other. So it's complete waste of time, not even considering the current bugs in the CG miner. So we decided to rewrite this in Rust, to have something that's a little bit more stable, safe, memory safe, has some tests. And the decision was that, okay, if we have the option to change the mining software, let's put the new protocol right away into it natively, so that the implementation is as light as possible and allows easier adoption. So that was the idea behind it.
Yeah, well, we did it just for the header.
For the header only mining.
Which is super simple. I mean, headers only mining in Stratum V2 takes, on the wire protocol is dead simple, and the actual implementation is really quite straightforward. When you compare it to Stratum V1, it's just so much easier.
And nicely fits with ASIC boost. It's actually the only way to do it in the right way.
So BetterHash was, had a lot of the same. It had some similar high-level features, so selecting your own work, a lot of the same security properties, was much less efficient for the pool data savings, primarily because of the selecting your own work being baked into the same protocol. So instead with Stratum V2, it's split out into a parallel protocol, and you can use a different server, and this lets you save a lot of data in different areas of the protocol, in the kind of key main area of the protocol where there's actual mining going on. Of course, it's also way developed with way more poolside knowledge, so way more knowledge about how pool servers work in practice. I'm no expert on that, obviously. So hopefully it's much easier to adopt for pools than BetterHash ever would have been. BetterHash never got beyond the stage of kind of soliciting feedback. There were sample implementations, there's people who played with it, but it never got to the stage of like, okay, let's start building very significant pieces of infrastructure based on it. Obviously that's kind of the state that Stratum V2 is in. It's time to get a lot of feedback, but there's a lot more resources going into Stratum V2 already at this stage, let alone in the coming stages. So that gives it a leg up. And I don't think there's any kind of reason to maintain BetterHash implementations or the spec, given that Stratum V2 has kind of all of the major features of BetterHash and a number of other features.
But it helped really to push the work selection to...
Yeah, it really helped get the community excited. Here's a concrete implemented thing that you could use, got the community really excited and really helped push everything forward, but it served its purpose.
Yeah, we didn't intend to put this feature to the protocol originally, like 2 years ago when we started to think about the features. And this was obviously BetterHash's job.
Right.
Like show that it should somehow be possible. When we read it for the first time, we thought there's no way how to make it efficient and secure for pool, like public pool, not a private one. But then we somehow found the solution, and then obviously there was a lot of work after that. But yeah, it's definitely a bit harsh.
Well, it was a big heads up for us to start working eventually, because
right.
sometimes you think about some ideas and you're like, well, it'd be nice to do this and that, but you never find the time because you have other things and like the priority.
Right.
We didn't want to be pushed to implement better. if
No, I
we
mean,
launched,
right,
then we would
but
eventually.
but not for like personal reasons, but like saying, okay, if we're gonna do a change, it should be a qualitative change, and we know like what our problems are. There are the real industry problems that we have to face, and let's make it the best way it can be.
Would like to hear from anybody who would spend some time reading it and trying to understand it. Because we spend hours on that, a lot of hours.
We spent days.
But still there can be a logical issue or some other use case we didn't go through. So any feedback would be awesome, obviously. But at least I anticipate like single months of getting additional feedback and making tweaks, pushing for making the simulation capable of simulating all.
Yeah, we didn't say we have a simulator. We have a baseline for the simulator for V1, V2, a pool, a miner. We need to finalize the proxy and then build different scenarios. So the community is all open to. It's an open call for anybody to figure out different scenarios that they like, and they can just run the simulation in them. That's a hard question.
Random coincidence.
I would say so. It's really random.
I think there was enough people at one place influenced by interesting ideas at the same time, so that locally there could be some network effect. They could talk to each other and keep the idea, and then once there is a seed, you can add more people and businesses this way. Because if you are alone in town thinking about something, it's much more difficult to actually do something. But once there is more people at the same time, it's getting easier and easier. And I think Prague was just lucky that there was enough people knowing each other, talking about this stuff, and being influenced by early cypherpunk ideas that it just happened. I don't have any better explanation for it.
Well, I guess the concentration of people that hated central banks, and since we're very close to Austria, we kind of like the Austrian economic school.
Like really, after all years.
It could be a coincidence.
You never know.
So that made quite a few people turn to Bitcoin, and by accident, since Prague is also a university city, we have technical universities in here. The concentration of engineers, by chance, interested also in this topic, was higher than somewhere else in the world, but it's really hard to say. Well, I think so, considering the size of the full software package that's being developed. I think it was worth it, and it's a quality shift. So yes, and it was level intensive, but we're there. I don't think we're done. It's the beginning. I mean, one thing is writing the spec, and the other part is developing the software that can actually do all these things that have been specified. And we're going to see what the global discussion about the protocol is going to be about. And I'm very curious about the adoption and how fast it's going to go. We're designing it for efficiency, and we care about the data bandwidth and all these things and covering security aspects. Unless there are some incompatibilities in the future for whatever scenarios we forgot to cover, I don't think there would be like a complete switch, but there may be an iteration of this protocol if there are new scenarios that need to be covered.
I don't see a lot of space for another protocol to be so better that people would spend enough time designing it if it is actually used. If somebody finds a problem with it, if it's not adopted for any reason, there will definitely be a different mining protocol. If it's widely adopted, I don't think there will be enough reasons to put so much effort into designing something new. It took 7 years, maybe something more, to even design V2.
One thing that's been missing in the Bitcoin community has been a really easy to use sample pool. So there's been some open source pools that kind of work or are a little janky or what have you, but nothing like kind of the professionalism and the ease of use of the existing public pools. So having a working on the existing sample clients and sample proxies and whatnot to make sure that those are really easy to use for people and developers who are testing things in Bitcoin Core, running testnet, these kinds of things is something that I'm definitely committed to continuing to work on. Well, I don't know. I mean, Pavel is a little annoying sometimes, and Jan, we got into a few brawls while we were here. I held my own. Yeah. I think we got all of the use cases we know of, and I think we did have a number of forward-looking conversations about how might Bitcoin change and how might that impact the mining protocol and things like that. So I think we probably covered our bases pretty well, but just in case, we have lots of extensibility mechanisms. So even if we have to, it'll be easy to do.